Welcome to Story Hour, a virtual meetup hosted by Wolf and Heron.
Leadership, to me, I've discovered over the years, is not about seeking validation. And I think that's a very important thing to realize, because leaders, when you look at history, are not people who looked around and asked people if it was all right to do the things that they did. They acted. And I think that's important because ever since I was a child, I've always wanted to be in a leadership position. It's a desire that I've always had, and I can't really shy away from it because of all the things that I've done. For example, some of the odd things that I've done is I have put on presentations at law schools after I graduated. I organized the first ever boat rave in Philadelphia. One interesting thing about that actually was I did not get permission to do that. There was a massive event organization in New York City, and I attended a bunch of their parties, and I got to know the people who operated that. And because I lived in Philadelphia, I always wanted to have an event come from New York City down to Philly. What ended up happening is I literally organized the entire thing. I found the people to do it. I found the speaker system, the venue, which was a boat. I got the DJs. The DJs were the people who were working for the organization in New York. And what I did is, in the very end, I literally put together a giant Excel spreadsheet with all of the information, costs, details about everything. And I sent it to the people in New York, and they basically like hung up the phone on me. And then I got a call 5 minutes later, and they said, Milo, first of all, we want to tell you you're a huge asshole because you didn't get our permission or anything like that. But the second thing we'll tell you is we are going to host your events. So we are going to be affiliated with you. The reason for that was because all of the things were already set up for them to actually be a part of this. So even if they didn't do it, the event would be recognized as them. So the reason that I'm saying this is because I have gotten up and had the courage to put myself in a leadership position numerous times in my past. And it doesn't come from strong arming your way into a position where other people say Milo's the leader. That's not how it happens. What I've discovered is leaders end up doing the work that other people don't want to do. For example, dealing with the finances, putting the spreadsheet together, working extra overtime after so that you actually have the full capacity of the event or whatever it is you're organizing in your mind and not just a small piece. I remember one time I was doing wilderness emergency medical technician, which is a wilderness EMT training out in Lander, Wyoming. And we were doing a major scenario series. And we were, I think, on the 4th day of 5, and I literally just sent a message to every single participant. And I said, hey, let's meet after class in the classroom. And we had dinner after that, so everybody went to dinner, and then they returned to the classroom. And in the meantime, I didn't eat dinner. I actually sat down and I wrote out an entire script of how we as a classroom or as a class can overcome the challenges that are ahead of us. And let me describe this to you. So I was in the classroom. I literally set up, this is recorded. So if you guys ever want to see a super cringe-worthy video, this is absolutely going to be it. I still have not watched it a second time because of how embarrassed I am. But I remember being in the classroom, and there was no nominations. There was no hierarchy. We were just all students. And I got everybody together, and I stood in front of the classroom, and I basically described to them where we were as a class, that we should be working together. I've got all these people staring at me. First of all, most of them don't even know why they're there. And then I can see that already they're becoming critical because what they see is somebody trying to take control and trying to take the reins. And that actually resulted in this thing completely backfiring on me. So not only was I embarrassed to say things from a leadership position, but the people who were present also almost rebelled emotionally because their gut reaction was, why does Milo want to be the leader here? Because he wants to take the credit or something? Like, is he, and it didn't work out. And that was the case for many other events and organized things afterwards, whether they were international or whatever else. And ultimately, I found myself in a leadership position now, but it was by happenstance. Like, I didn't actually, so right now I'm working on a project in Iraq. We just completed a climbing school there. And I am credited with being the person that made that happen. And the reality is I didn't actually want to have that position. But what happened is I started paying attention and accomplishing everything that needed to get done, get sponsors, literally just living the life of being the person who was pushing this forward. And it was not because I wanted to be a leader, but because I held all of the information in my head. And so I believe that leadership is not seeking validation from other people. It's being present and understanding the scope of the project. And that, so if anybody has any questions, you're just the person to go to, because you know how everything connects. And you have to shy away from the fact that people might not like you. Because in the end, leaders are not necessarily liked. They're the people that make the right decisions that gets the community moving forward. So thank you for listening, and I'm going to finish here because that was 5 minutes and 20 seconds.
Thank you for sharing your story.
There was like 6 there, so sorry about that.
That can be an interesting topic of conversation for us. To begin the feedback session, again, we'll focus on what Milo did well. What did you appreciate about his story? How did he effectively use his superpowers, and or what was powerful? Who will give us the first feedback? Yes, Bart.
I was here 3 weeks ago, I think it was, and you read a story that you're working on. And this time you came off as much more believable as a story, as telling a story, than I think, it was actually, I know it was less probably thought through, but as a story, it worked better than the reading, part. Like I could get more engaged. Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Felt a little bit more like you kind of just sharing your experience.
We always recommend people write as a way to get their story locked, and then we say, but don't read it.
Yeah.
It's really hard to do both.
What else?
I liked the philosophical, just, like if you try, there's definitely a wrong way to try to assert yourself as a leader. And, if you do, and like another thing you mentioned is you have to be comfortable with the fact that some people are going to not like you if you're in a leadership position. I liked the philosophical takeaways.
Thank you.
It felt like you had thought a decent amount about what your point of view was going to be. And you had some, sound bites that were like, it's not about seeking validation. It's about being present. It's about understanding what the project is about. It's about, to John's point, not being worried about what people think about you. I think all of that is the baseline for a theme. And so I thought that was, you had thought about it a little bit, and that came through.
Thank you. Yeah, I did. I mean, the thing is that this was a story, like I said, it wasn't necessarily prepared, but because it was a leadership story, I really felt like talking about my experience of how I got to the place now where I am able to walk into a situation and not assert myself as a leader, but become so useful that I can benefit every single individual that is part of it. And I think that's where you put yourself in a position to be trusted. So I just didn't know where to go with it. And like I said, there was a bunch of things like that story about the whole rave in Philly that just popped into my head as I was talking. And I'm just like, you know what, I'm going to go with it because it's a funny story, because that actually happened. They were like, you're an asshole, but we're going to do it. And then since then, they wanted me to do every single event that they had. So they didn't have to like me.
What, any other thoughts about what Milo did well?
Well, I think just that last comment, like keeping it real, I think part of it's because it was off the cuff, but putting yourself out there in both examples where you learned and examples where you succeeded, and you can learn from both things. But I think it grounded your story, lend a lot of credibility to it.
Thank you.
Stephen, yes.
Minor things. I think Milo has a great voice.
Thank you.
It'll run well on a stage. It'll run well in a microphone. It's a good tool. It's a good thing to have with you.
Well, go ahead.
You also have a face-forward kind of presentation. You're not shy of looking at, well, in video here, it's all screwed up because we can't see each other's eyeballs straight on, but you're not shy of facing the public.
Right.
Okay, what are some ideas that Milo could experiment with, things that you would share critique? What did you think he could perhaps switch up next time?
I do want to say, please be as honest as possible, because I'm only where I am right now, literally with Wolf and Heron, because I've received feedback that really made me pause and reflect. So if you guys have something at all, please don't worry. I'm not going to take any offense.
Yes, John, and then Stephen.
So you told a success story up front, basically, with planning the rave, and then you told a story about a time when you had, a leadership moment or opportunity that was met with more adversity and was in some respects a failure, I suppose. So I would switch those around so that you can contrast what didn't work and what did work and what you take away from that. And also because if you come out of the gates talking about something that you succeeded at, then you come across as an overdog, and everybody relates to underdogs. And so that's why every hero and every story, unless it's every good story anyway, has moments like the first third, the first half, or perhaps even all the way to the climax of a story. Heroes are people who struggle with recent failures or relationship issues, self-doubt, and all sorts of stuff. So you don't want to overplay that. You want to be authentic, but sing some kind of transition or at least building up from failure to success. Just switching the two stories around would have achieved that pretty nicely.
A good point about the overdog story.
And I know
why, yeah.
And I know
that's why. Yes, sir. Go ahead. Sorry.
Sorry, you go ahead, Milo.
I was going to say that's probably why it didn't work out in that story, because I came up to the stage and I said, "Hey, I'm going to be your leader, and here's the plan I came up with," rather than participating. I don't know, but your point is right that the overdog is going to produce the opposite effect of you wanting to be personable.
Stephen.
So I think John just elaborated a lot. I will say it differently. You told us a big detail, and then you didn't elaborate anything about that big detail. It's a big part of your story.
Yeah.
And yet you said it in 3 words, and then you left the topic. What are my 3 words?
Oh, I thought it was going to be the one about not seeking validation.
Nope. The 3 words are, you're an asshole.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why are you an asshole? What was it you were doing that invoked such a negative response on their part? Now, you told us the good parts of what you were doing, but you didn't go into that whole story, which is actually I think would greatly elaborate the lesson you have for us here. What did you really do wrong that provoked such a negative thing? And clearly, what you did right. Well, I'll take your word on that. Not only because it sounds believable, but because it got you past the part you did wrong.
Yeah.
However, it would be useful in this story to hear you confess and learn from those mistakes, whatever they were. I don't. You'll have to tell us.
Maybe there will be a refining. I'll refine the story and I'll tell you guys.
Yeah.
I think actually, Stephen, what you're suggesting is a way to make the party rave success story into something that is more balanced, in that it's not you're the overdog or the underdog. You're kind of a human being that's flawed and learning. And that can, in of itself, even in just that one story, become both your failure and your success, and help you to tighten in a lot of ways. You don't have to tell the 3 stories now. You can just tell the one, as a way to really elaborate on what you learned about leadership and what has come from it, from that experience.
Yeah.
We have a tradition.
Way to steal my fire. Damn. Just like.
Or would you like to add anything to that?
There was one thing I wanted to ask. I actually wanted to ask Milo. I was like, what, in a nutshell, what is the basic message of what you're trying to do with the story?
That leadership, well, honestly, the way that I literally started this, and I wish that this actually was the question you asked me before I even started, but I wanted to say that becoming a leader is a marathon. It's not a sprint. You don't just show up and like become a leader. You are present to gain enough trust, knowledge, and experience to be able to be responsible for whatever it is that you're working on.
Right.
So it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. Leadership is pretty much what I was trying to say.
Okay. Yeah, I would centralize more on that and drive it, like Stephanie and Stephen were both putting down, like drive it into maybe one story that can be both sides of that kind of explain the whole thing. Like, I don't know if you need multiple stories.
No, I just
or examples, I guess. Maybe, because I agree, like the whole thing with the planning of the flotilla and all that stuff, like we all know it's like I always say, if it wasn't for failure, I would not be the success I am today. And so, you have to go through all those things and your balances and you run back and forth. And that's what really the ability to go out and put yourself out there and willingness to fail, but then come back and go, oh, all right, here's where I have to do better. Here's what we got to do better. Is kind of that marathon, right? Is that push and pull. So.
Yeah. I mean, you guys saw the story blossom here from being nothing to where it went to. And I think what we're seeing now is actually what happens during the process of writing your story out. Because when I started, I didn't actually know where I was going. So I kind of let it take me there. And then now at the end, now that you're asking questions, what was it really about? I could reflect and say, well, it ended up being about this. And I think that's what happens. Then you can go back to your story and erase those unnecessary tangents and narrow it down to exactly what it's going to be with the 4 superhero ideas that you guys have on that sheet. Awesome. Which is in the comments, by the way, everybody.
Stephen, did you have another thought to add?
I was just going to say that there's a kind of a stereotypical C story that, or C story structure, which is you go through all the drama of whatever's going on in your boat, or the people, or the fish, or the sea, or the storm, or whatever. And then at the end of it, you say, what did we do right and what did we do wrong? And I've seen this in many places, in sailing magazines and in sailing videos and in real life in bars and on the VHF radios and trivia times. We all use this sort of idiom where you do all the drama, and then you very deliberately cut to what the lessons are, who got what part right, who got what part wrong, and it's very it's accepted by the audience and the speaker that you can confess your sins and your ignorance and whatever, and as well as describing the sins and ignorance of others. But it's just an idiom, a way to organize a story, and I've seen it often. It works well.
Thank you.
One of the things we talk about when we talk about keep it real is that you will be more likable if you focus on the things you did wrong. And so it's helpful when you have a story that is both a failure and a success story, to spend some time lingering on the failure moments, on the learning moments, because that is what makes you approachable and likable and human on the stage.
Yes, I'll echo that. That's actually very important. You have to be able to expose yourself, make yourself vulnerable to criticism, and demonstrate that you're learning the lessons, and then people give you a break immediately.
Yeah.
Visit wolfandheron.com to find out more about our story hours.